Welcome back, everybody. We have a super exciting topic. I've been waiting to drop this video. Ton of information here, so bear with me as I get it all out. You guys know I ramble a little bit. But today, we're going to be covering Martin Luther King's life and afterlife. Okay? And I also have a bold claim here for you. Martin Luther King potentially is the greatest American to ever step foot on this country, or in this country. Greatest American of all time is my claim. Let's talk about it at the end. Let's get into it. Okay, so, starting off. Born January 15th, 1929. He was actually born with the name Michael Luther King. Okay? And he transitioned from Michael to Martin at age 28. Him and his father did at the same time because of Martin Luther, the old school preacher. I'm not real aware of Martin Luther, the original, so I'm not going to go into detail about that. But he was born in Atlanta, Georgia, to Martin and Alberta King, or Michael, I guess. And his father was a preacher, his mother mostly a housewife, I believe. Not a whole lot of information out on her. But, as we all know, Martin turned out to be, for one, also a Baptist preacher like his father, and also the face of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. Okay, so I want to start out on his childhood a little bit. As a child, he was skeptical of Christianity. And I mean, I'm not down on Christianity here, but I think it's very conscious of Martin at such a young age to question these things instead of just take the beliefs of parents and relatives and anything like that. He said, let me experience it for myself before I 100% believe it. I think that is incredibly conscious, especially at a young age. But a couple years later, lessons later, he transitioned and he found Christianity more so baptism. He was a Baptist. I'm not sure. Baptist? I don't know. I'm sorry. So in college, he made peace with the Baptist church, and he has this following quote. The church offered the most assuring way to answer an inner urge to serve humanity. So he became a rational minister with sermons that were respectful, force for ideas, and even social protests. Another very deep thing, I believe, because you're seeing that instead of just looking for a career, make some money, pay his bills, he had an inner urge, similar to how I feel. I really resonated with that verse or that quote because I have that same inner urge to help humanity. I think it's incredible that he had that, got the vision, made the blueprint, and made it happen. That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay. Okay, so I want to talk about his first speech he ever gave at age 15. He was always told he had a great speaking voice, and he got a lot of that from the Baptist church. People, you go to church a couple times a week, you're going to get that. Titus Beard, if you watch that, you are one with a great speaking voice. Similar. Okay? But, first quote ever. Or first speech ever, right? So here's a quote from it. Quote, Black America still wears chains. The finest N-word is at the mercy of the meanest white man. Even winners of our highest honors face the class color bar. End quote. Whew. At age 15, a mere child. But this was the reality. It doesn't matter how high you were in the black community. You were always 2/3 the man of whoever, the homeless white man. It does not matter. Jim Crow laws. That's how it was. And no, in these quotes, I will not say the N-word. It's just against me. I don't believe it should be used, so I'm not going to. Personal belief, take it as you may. But I want to continue. And I think it's also worth noting that Mahatma Gandhi was a huge influence on Martin's philosophy of nonviolence. And the nonviolence was a huge impact because there's not a lot that you could hold against them, you know? You know, they'd sit in, they'd march, they'd quietly protest. Like, that, what are you gonna do? You know? Like, obviously there was a lot of police brutality that still came, but the fact is, they thought nonviolence would bring on more media attention, and as we continue down this, you will see that that was true. So, amazing intellectual mind, man. Like, anyway, so Martin hit the big media stage, during the 1955 Montgomery bus boycott. After we've heard this story, okay? Claudette Colvin, and later, Rosa Parks. They refused to give up, there were a couple gals, they refused to give up their seat for, I believe, some white gentlemen. And, you know, that was against the Jim Crow laws. So, that was a huge catastrophe. I believe they were jailed. The first one was a minor, Claudette. So, yeah. And, you know, this took a lot out of Martin. This was his first big media spiel or whatever, but it took a lot out of him. It took 385 days to complete. It ended up in his first incarceration. First time going to jail. Martin's first time going to jail, and that really affected him. It actually also involved, on January 30th, 1956, so, you know, a couple months later, it involved his house being bombed. There was a gentleman that witnessed a white man drive up to his house, jump out, throw something at the front door, and run away and drive off quickly. And later that was known to be a bomb. His wife heard the explosion, and there was another lady in there, and they ran to the back of the house, called Martin. But Coretta, his wife, she says that day she lost her fear of death, and it brought the awareness to how much she meant to Martin Luther King's movement and the support that he needed. She sunk her teeth in too. I think that's awesome. If you're going to do something as radical as Martin did, you have to have that partner in crime. You have to. Okay, so let's keep going. 1959. Well, let's go to this first. 1958. I thought this was interesting. Harlem, New York. Survives a knife attack. He's stabbed in the neck area and survives. There was a police on the scene, gave him attention, and he was fine. That was an older, sickly African-American lady. She couldn't even be tried because she was mentally insane. So, nothing happened to that. But, I mean, you know, you almost die. That's a big thing for him. So, moving forward, 1959. He visited Mahatma Gandhi, like I said, and that's where a lot of these philosophies came. So, yes, he was different early on, but after this, like, it truly enlightened him, and he says he never used nonviolence, that sentence, nonviolence, until after he got back from that trip with Gandhi. I thought that was cool. October 19th, 1960. Martin Luther King participated in the Atlanta sit-ins, aimed to desegregate buses or businesses and public spaces. Everyone was arrested and released in the next few days except Martin. He was sent to a maximum security hard labor. You know, like they know that he's a big face in the black community. They wanted to put him down, you know. So many feared for his life because a lot of these people in these harsh maximum security like prisons, we'll call it, you know, white men that didn't like his movement, you know, so a lot of people feared for his life. And, you know, potentially president, you know, they were going through it. JFK stepped in, wrote a couple letters, made a couple phone calls. 2 days later, Martin's out. Okay, very cool, very cool. That actually helped JFK get inaugurated into the presidency because Martin's father vouched for him. So after that, I mean, speculation, a lot of the black voters went that side. Actually, I don't know if they were actually allowed to vote yet, honestly. So somebody leave a comment. Let me know about that. This is 1960. So, 1961, the Albany movement resulted in another arrest and very few results. So, this took over a year, but the results were not there. They didn't get any true results. But what Martin got, because he's gonna get what he can get. Every loss you get a lesson. So, what did he get? He learned the philosophy behind how to get shit done. Okay? Yeah, he's putting his life on the line. He's putting his family on the line, going to jail, he can't pay his bills, everything. Putting all that stuff on the line. He wants results. He wants to help his people. He wants to lead his people. Okay? So, he took the L, took notes, went back to the drawing board, and figured out how to get it done. Okay? So, moving forward. The Birmingham Campaign of 1963. Using nonviolent but intentionally confrontational tactics like occupying public spaces and sit-ins, Martin's intent was to have mass arrests so big it will inevitably open the door for negotiation. This resulted in, because he was taken pretty early into this March, we'll say. This was his 13th of 29 arrests. So the first one came in 56. So the 56 to 63, he was arrested 12 times. That's radical. I love it. I love it. Okay. This is where a lot of the media coverage started to pick up. This is where he saw the results. There was high pressure fire hoses and police dog attacks, all caught by the media, spread all across the country and eventually all over the world. This really started to raise the eyes of Northerners, and just people all over the world. They started seeing, like, really, how bad is this, and there was kids involved. Kids were getting hit with fire hoses and dogs, and they took a lot of heat because there was kids involved. But I think that they wanted the kids to know too, like, we have to fight for what's right. So in his prison cell, this is pretty cool. In his prison cell, he talked. This is kind of a rough quote. We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. And then he goes on to point out how the Boston Tea Party, a big moment in American history, that was a big turning table, something illegal that had to be done to get what was right. And then he goes on to talk about how that was illegal, but what Adolf Hitler did to the Jews was technically legal. Just pointing that out. I have an amazing quote here for you. Okay. This is potentially the deepest quote I've ever read. Alright, so I want you to get your notebooks out. Okay, so let's talk about this. Quote, I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the N-word, great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner. So, he's saying so far, the issue or the thing that's holding us back, the roadblock, is not the Klan member or the radical right sider, whatever. Is not, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is present of justice. So the average white male, or white person, male or female, at this point in history, was the roadblock, because they were more devoted to order, keeping the laws intact, than to justice, what is right. They prefer negative peace, which is the absence of tension, no tension. They just wanted to sail to a positive peace, which is presence of justice. Who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action. Woo! They agree that you should be free, but they cannot agree with the way you want to be free. Are we not seeing that today? Yeah. You shouldn't have to deal with police brutality, but I don't think rioting or peaceful protesting or whatever is the right way to do it. Are we not seeing this today, America? Are we not? Let's continue. Okay. Who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time and constantly advises the inward to wait for a more convenient season. End quote. I'm sorry, I'm going to read it one more time. I interrupted a lot. Okay. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the inward, great stumbling block in this stride towards freedom is not the white citizen counselor or the Ku Klux Klan clanner, whatever, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is a presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal that you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by the mythical concept of time and constantly advises the inward to wait for a more convenient season. Quote, Martin Luther King. My God. I hope your heart's burning, man. I hope your heart's burning, man, because mine is. That got me riled up. Okay. Gotta keep it moving here. A lot of more information to catch. Okay. August 28, 1963. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. This is the one we know. We see this all the time in the textbooks and stuff. I'll talk about that later. JFK, the president at this time, was originally against the idea, but then jumped on board as he saw there was no other way. He was worried about the backlash, but he did jump on. JFK, man. I gotta make an episode about JFK because he was a radical in his own. You know? It's sad how all these people are taken out. But it wasn't all support, man. The march had demands specifically ending of racial segregation in schools, laws prohibiting racial discrimination in employment, protection of civil rights workers, and a $2 minimum wage, which was about $17 in 2017. But, like I said, this is not all supported, okay? So the Nation of Islam, or, a lot of people know Malcolm X more. They called this the farce on Washington. They were not supporters of this. I mean, they definitely wanted the same goal, similar, kinda, not actually similar. The Nation of Islam more wanted separation, and Martin Luther King wanted integration. So, different, but the same. Then we have the I Have a Dream speech. Whew. If you have not heard it, read it, listen to it. It came to be regarded as one of the finest speeches ever, put civil rights on the top of the agenda for reformers, and facilitated passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Making noise now. We're getting things done. We're passing bills. Everybody's seeing it. Okay. There was 250,000 people of diverse ethnicity covered the area. The biggest DC protest up to that date. Okay, let's keep it moving then. St. Augustine, Florida, 1964. They marched mostly at night. This was a couple months long. They were met with Klan members at night. Things happened, like he was always about the peace, but not everybody's about the peace, so keep it moving. Selma, Alabama. the heart of the South. Rebel flags on the Capitol building. There's a movie out there. I think it's called Selma. Very powerful. Check it out. Okay, so at this point, 3 or more people affiliated with any of the 41 civil rights leaders, they had them marked down, there was 41 of them, would be jailed until, by the gentleman, Martin Luther King came in to the Brown Chapel, delivered a speech. Delivered a speech, riled the people up. They demanded a march. After many times of being blocked, they started, I want to say around like March 3rd or something. They were blocked by mobs, police, all these things. Okay, March 25th, they tried to get it passed by the Senate. Declined. They said, we are marching anyway. Martin wasn't actually there that day, but they marched from, didn't write it down, I want to say it was Birmingham to Salem, something of that nature. Leave a comment down if you're aware of this. And they call this, it was resulted in Bloody Sunday. You had a bunch of peaceful protesters walking. They met a wall of police and, watched the movie. Devastating. Devastating. Martin said if he knew that was going to happen, he definitely would have put down his Baptist duties and been there that day. Didn't happen. He was there a couple days later, I believe. And the speech, how long, not long, was delivered. He also went on, those were like 2 huge ones. He also went on to the Chicago open house in 1967, where he was struck by a brick and continued to lead the march. They say that Chicago, even though it was north, they had a ton of backlash in Chicago, and it took a lot of push to get something to happen there. And basically what they were looking for was proper housing. There was a experiment done where white and black families, same income, same amount of people, all these things were put into the same, like they gave the same application to apartments and stuff, and they constantly pushed the black people to one side of the city. That's segregation. That is segregation. So they eventually made that happen. Okay. The Poor People's Campaign in 1968. That was another big one. And then he was, towards the end of his life, he was a big activist for ending the Vietnam War. He was definitely against violence, but this was bigger for him because he felt like all the money and funds that we're using over there can be used here to help the people that live in this country. True. That was definitely a big divide in the country, if we should be in that war. And a couple decades later, we find out that our leaders knew we couldn't win the war, and we continued to fight. So obviously we shouldn't have been there. He was definitely on something. Man, the day, March 29th, 1968. Martin Luther King traveled to Memphis, although his plane was stopped early. They weren't stopped, they couldn't leave because there was a bomb threat for his plane. People wanted him dead, man. It's crazy. So, he traveled to Memphis for the sanitary employees on strike. They were sanitary employees of the state or the city, and they just weren't getting paid right. If they got sent home early for like bad weather, the black employees, they'd be paid for as long as they were there, and the white employees would get paid for the whole day. So, they wanted fair rights. That's completely understandable. King was shot at 6:01 p.m. on 4/4/1968. So a couple days after he arrived, he was standing on his balcony outside. He was with a lot of his friends. Jesse Jackson was there. There was a musician there. And, they heard the gunshot and they ran outside, and he was shot in the right side jaw, and it hit his spinal cord and went down into his shoulder, something of that nature. And there's a lot of skepticism here. You have poor white man, not from Memphis, comes in with a very nice gun knows where he is, knows when to hit him. Jesse Jackson claims there was an inside man on their team. A lot of skepticism. There's also skepticism that he actually survived the trip to the hospital and that there was a doctor in the hospital. Again, I'm no conspiracy theorist, so don't take this. There's no physical proof of this. But there was a nurse that came out, stated that the doctor came in and said, let that N-word die. And then everybody had to leave the room, and he stayed in there. And a couple minutes later, when they came back in, he was gone. So, I don't know. You take that how you want. But, finishing up here, following that, the race riots came immediately after in cities such as D.C., Chicago, Baltimore, Louisville, Kansas City, and dozens of other cities across America. Everybody mourned the death of this man. He was a national hero, potentially the best American ever. I'm making the claim and I'm standing by it. Argue if you want. Leave it in the comments. We could talk. The level of consciousness this man had. The love this man had. The Christians out here, they talk about all this stuff, but if you look at Martin, that's how Jesus moved. Love, was right, didn't talk about anybody. That should be your man, right? But the truth is, if there was a man such as Martin Luther King today, fair claim that a lot of the Christians would be against him, just like they were back in the day. Okay? And I think it's also a fair something to bring up, something that's on my heart. You know, we have a lot of turmoil right now in this country, and I think it's disgusting that a whole generation of black leaders were killed. Malcolm, Martin, everybody, all the leaders are killed off. So then there's nobody to teach that next couple generations. You know, we still got through. We're not done. We're not down and out. But it definitely set us back. And they knew what they were doing. Skepticism, whatever. But they knew what they were doing. Because now look who we have. You know, I'm even going to say that Tupac was a activist of sorts. He was definitely part of the Black Panthers. Okay, so when you take all these leaders out, all you have left is musicians, athletes, and you guys don't like hearing them. And I mean, you know, there's a lot of comparison between what happened in the Capitol this month and what happened over the summer with the Black Lives Matter movement. You know, similar but not really. Okay, so you have one group of people that, you know, demands, not always peaceful, I won't say that, but demands change, goes to, you know, their cities, and, you know, there was a lot of peaceful protests that were met with very violent police. I witnessed it with my own eyes, okay, I was down there, I went to the protests, like, and then there was an incident in the Capitol, and I'm not going to say that that's all wrong either, because you know what, if you demand change, demand it, take it up to your Senate, take it up to your leaders. That's what you have to do. But don't try to act like this is the same thing. Because this Black Lives Matter, no, it hasn't always been called that. And yes, there's some people in the organization that's not all about the good things. But overall, the movement, this has been a long time coming. And the fact that it's just now starting to spark up again the last couple of years is kind of sad. And I can't wait to see how far it goes, because it's not there yet. It's not there yet. We're not equal, okay? You see it in education. You see it because, I mean, I'm not going to say in education, but they're held back in different ways, you know? I feel like I'm getting into too much, man. I just want to say that there were certain things that were played out to hold the black man back, and we still see those effects. I guess it is what it is, right? But I hope y'all like this little history lesson, man. I went to a predominantly, at least earlier in my high school career, predominantly white school, and I 100% believe that it's whitewashed. The education system is whitewashed, okay? They cover their tracks, they cover up their mishaps and their disgustingness, honestly. Like, I was not told about Birmingham. I wasn't told about Salem. We learned about the Salem witch trials. We didn't learn about what happened in Salem like 40, 50 years ago. Well, 60 years ago now. 60 years ago. 60. And we're still dealing with it today in America. I'm pissed. We got to make a change, and it needed to happen yesterday. So, the soul of Martin Luther King is still marching, and there's still people out here that want to carry that on, and we're going to make that change. I look at myself as a young activist. No, I don't have that reach yet. No, I don't even have that game plan yet of where I want to go and who I want to, you know what I mean? But I do have that burn, that same burn that Martin has, and I hope you do too. You need to listen to his speech, the blueprint to your life, or something along those lines. I listened to it. I'm sorry I forget the name, but check it out. Peace, much love. Sorry for the long video. Namaste.